Hi friends, I'm Parvez and welcome to my new course on Python, Flask and React Native mobile frontend course. Now in this course we're going to learn that how you can build your backend API using Python, Flask, and after that how you can integrate that with the React Native mobile frontend. So this will be the simple application that we want to build. So you can see that we can click on this and we can insert data. So let me just say this is my new data, and I can just say this is my new description, and if I click on the insert article, so now if I pull to refresh, so you can see we have a functionality of pull to refresh, and you can see that this data is added. This is my new data, and also we have this is my new description, and this is the date and time. Now we can edit this, so I'm going to just click on the edit, and for example I can just say updated, and I can just say updated, and if I click on the update, so now if I pull to refresh, you can see that this is updated, and also if I see, you can see the description is also updated. Now we can delete this data. I can just click on the delete. I am navigated to the home page. Now if I pull to refresh, you can see that the data is deleted. Now let's start our course. Now let's create our backend API. For this we need to install some libraries. So the first one is Flask. As you know, it's a simple framework for building complex web application, and it's Flask is a lightweight WSGI web application framework. It is designed to make getting started quick and easy. So now Flask is a micro framework, and it's powerful. After Django, it's the second most popular web framework for Python programming language. Now, first of all, you need to install Flask. You can just use pip install Flask, and in here, so I've already created a virtual environment, and you can just say pip install Flask. And after installation of the Flask, we need another extension or library that's called Flask SQLAlchemy, and it's an extension for Flask that adds support for SQLAlchemy to your application. And it aims to simplify using SQLAlchemy with Flask by providing useful defaults and extra helpers. So we need to install this, and we can just copy this and pip install Flask SQLAlchemy. So after installation of the SQLAlchemy, because we are using MySQL database, then we need to install MySQL client. Now you can set up Flask SQLAlchemy with different databases like Postgres, SQLite, MySQL database, and particularly we want to use MySQL database. Now for that you need to install a MySQL client. So we can just say pip install MySQL client, and now we are waiting for this. Okay, Flask SQLAlchemy has been installed. Now MySQL client, and after MySQL client we need to install Flask Marshmallow. Now it is Flask Marshmallow is a thin integration layer for Flask, and Marshmallow is an object serialization or deserialization library that adds additional features to Marshmallow, including URL and hyperlinks fields. So because before sending the data to the front end, we need to serialize the data. For that we are going to use Flask Marshmallow. So we can just use pip install Flask Marshmallow for the installation. Also, because we are using SQLAlchemy, also it's good to install Marshmallow SQLAlchemy. And okay, now the installation has been completed. Now let's create our first Flask application. So I've created a folder at the name of backend, and here I'm going to just create a new file, and I'm going to just call it app.py. So the first thing is that we need to import Flask. So we can just say from Flask, we are going to import Flask. Now after doing this, we need to create the object of the Flask, so we can just say Flask and we can pass underscore underscore name like this. Okay, now let's create our route, so we can just say at app.route. Now if you don't know about the Flask, I have a complete 4 hours training on Flask web development. I have added the link to the video description, you can just check it. So we're going to just use index and we can just give methods. Now by default, if you don't give any method, that's get. So but we want to give it explicitly. And after that, we're going to just say def get, or for example we can just say def get articles. Now we can just, first we need to import JSONify, so JSONify, and in here we can return JSONify and we can just say hello world. Now if you're using Flask as a full stack, then in here you can render your template, but because we are using Flask just as our backend, so for right now we are going to just say return this hello world. Now after doing this, now we need to run our Flask application, so in here we can just say underscore name underscore main and we can just say app.run, and we want to make the debug to true. Now if you're in the production level, then you don't need to add this. Because we are in the development mode, we can just make the debug to true. Now there are different ways that you can run your Flask application in Visual Studio Code. The easiest way is that we can just, in here we can just press F5, and from here we can choose Flask, and you can just copy the backend path, that where your app.py is located, and you can just paste it in here, and after that hit enter. Now we are waiting for the running of the Flask or Flask application, and you can see it will run in the debug console. It will run the Flask application, and we can just wait for this. So now you can see it running on this local host. Now let's just check this, and we can just say localhost port 5000, and now you can see that we have hello world in here. Now if I change this to get, you will see that I am receiving an error, because right now the route is changed and it's not index, it's for example get. So you can give it whatever you want, but for example in here I want it should be get. Now if I check this, so now you can see that not found, and if I go to the get, you can see that we are receiving hello world. Now let's just test this with the postman, and I'm going to just copy and paste it in here. So the method is get, and we can send. So now you can see that we are receiving hello world in here. And now we want to create our database and table. So as I've already said that we are using MySQL database. So for that I'm using WAMP server, and I have opened my phpMyAdmin, and in here I'm going to create a new database. So you can just call it whatever. So for example I'm going to just call it, for example, Flask, or we can just say Flask backend, we can just say Flask. So after that click on the create. So now you can see that database is created. Right now there is no table in this database because we want to create the tables using SQLAlchemy. So now let's just create our table. So the first thing is that we need to import the SQLAlchemy. So we can just say from Flask SQLAlchemy import SQLAlchemy. And now let's create this in here. We need to add our configuration. So the first one is we can just say app.config, and in here we can just say SQLAlchemy database URI. Okay, now in here you need to choose what database you want. So if you see the SQLAlchemy documentation, there are different databases. You can see that this is the database URI that you need to add. So let me just make it like this. So SQLAlchemy database URI, and after that, if you come down, you can see that there are different databases, Postgres, MySQL, and they have different configuration. So we can just copy this and we can add this in here like this. So this is the MySQL. For example, if you're using SQLite, you can change this to SQLite, or Postgres, you can change this to Postgres. So in my case, it's MySQL. I'm choosing MySQL. After that, you need to give the username, so that's root, and I don't have any password for that, so I can just leave it blank. This is localhost, and this is the database name, that is Flask. Also, we need to just add another configuration, even though it's not important, but if you don't add this, you'll receive a warning. And in here we can just say track. So track, and we can just say modifications. So SQLAlchemy track modifications, and we want to make this to false. So now we have created our configuration, and after doing this in here, we can just say db SQLAlchemy, and we need to pass the app in here. Now it's time to create our table. Right now we have our database, our Flask database, but there is no table. So we can create our class, and I'm going to just call it, for example, article, or you can just say article, so whatever you want. And it extends from db.model. After this, you need to specify the fields that you want. So I want it should be an ID field, db.column, and it is db.integer, and I want the primary key should be true. Now let's create another one that is title, and db.column, and this is db.text, not text. For this we are going to use a string, and we want to specify, for example, 100 character. Let's just copy this. So another one is this is text, and I don't need this 100 in here. Also, we can add a date. So date db.column, db.datetime, and we can add a default for this. And first we need to import datetime. We can just say import datetime, datetime.now. So now let's create our init method in here. So init, and we are going to add our title and description in here. So this is also not title, but this is description. Okay, or we can just say body. So you can just give, for example, I'm going to just give it body. So body. So we're going to add our title and body in here, and the idea is about to create it. And also we don't need to add the date, because it is it will be added automatically when we create our, for example, our articles. Now let's just say self.title. We want to initialize this, so self.title to title, and self.body to the body. So now we have created our table, but right now this table is not added to our database that we have created, to our Flask database. Now we need to add this. So for that, we can just change to the backend, change directory to the backend, and we can just open our Python terminal. And in here, the first thing is that you need to, from app, we are going to import db. So after importing the db, and you can just easily say db dot create all. And now let's check this Flask database. You can see that we have a table of articles with the fields of ID, title, body, and also date. Alright guys, now we have created our database and also tables. Now it's time to serialize our data. So for this, we have already said that we are using Flask Marshmallow, and it's a library or extension that's used for serialization or deserializations of the data. Now, before sending the data to the front end, we need to serialize that. So first, we need to import Flask Marshmallow. So from Flask Marshmallow, we are going to import Marshmallow. And in here we need to create the object of Marshmallow, and we can pass the app in here. So after doing this, we need to create our schema. So in here I can create class article schema, and we can just say marshmallow.schema. And after doing this, we can create our class meta. Now we can specify the fields that we want to serialize. So we can just add ID, so title, we have body, and we have date. And after doing this, now let's create our schema object in here. So we can just use article schema, and this is article schema. Now this is for one article. For example, if you want to serialize one article, then we can use this article schema. Now for example, if you want to serialize a query set, for that we need to use money to true. So we can just copy this and paste it in here, and we need to add money to true in here. And let's change this to article schema. So after doing this, now let's create our route. So right now we have just get article route, and we want to create another route that's for adding the article. So right now in here it's just returning a JSON file. Okay, now in here we can just say, let me copy this from here, and we can paste it in this section. This is add, and the method is post, and let's just say diff add article. So we need to import request in here, so we can just say import request, and so let's create the title, and we can just say request.json. We need to pass the title, and we can just copy this one for the body. So body, and this should be body. So after doing this, we need to create the object of our table, class table. So that is class articles. So in here we can just say, for example, articles, and we can pass the title and also the body in here. After doing this, we need to add this to the database. So we can just say db.session.add, and we want to add the articles, and also we need to commit the database. So db.session.commit, and at the end we can just return post schema. So because it's just one article, so for that we need to just return, not post schema, sorry, article schema. So we can just say article schema.jsonify, and we can pass this articles. So now the add article is it's prepared to Okay, now I'm going to open my Postman, and in here let's just copy this. Let's create another tab, and we are going to check that we can add something in here or not. Let's just change this to post, and we can grab this. So go to the body, and after the body we want to choose the row, and from here it should be JSON, and this is the title. So this is the title, and we can copy this. We need to add a body or description. We can say this is the body. So now let's just send. Okay, now you can see that we are receiving 200 OK, and we have, this is the body, we have the date, this is the date, this is the ID, and this is the title. And now if we get our this okay, now right now we cannot get because we haven't created the get route till now. So if you see now your database table articles, we have a new data with ID 1 in here. Now we can add another one, so let's just add another one. This is the second title, this is the second body, and we can just send. You can see that the ID 2 is added, and now if we check Flask, so let me just check the articles, you can see that we have another data with the second ID in this section. So this was the adding. Now let's change the get articles, because in here we want to just get the article instead of JSONify. So now we can just say all articles, and we can just say articles dot query dot all. We want to query over all articles, and after doing this we are going to just create results, and we can just add our schema in here. So articles schema, so because this time we are going to use a query set, so for that we need to just use the articles schema, and we can just say dot dump, and we want to add our all articles in here. And after that we can just say return JSONify the results. So now let's just check this, that we can get our 2 articles or not. So this time we can just go to the get. So now if I send to, if I request the get, so you can see that I am receiving the 2 articles in here with, so this is the first one, then this is the second one. And also if you go to the local host, now you can see that we have the 2 articles in here. Now let's create another route, and that's for getting the specific details of the article according to ID. For right now, if I for example get the first article, and if I send, you'll see that I am receiving error, and you can see that I'm receiving error. So for that we need to create another route in here, and I'm going to just copy this and paste it in here. And so this should be get, and we want to get according to the ID, and the method is get. So now let's just say diff, for example, post details or whatever you want, and we can pass ID in here. And now let's just say post, or we can just say article, article, so for one article, and we can just say articles dot query dot get, we are going to use get, and we want to get that according to the specific ID. And now we can just return, because it's 1, so for that we can just use article schema dot JSONify, and now we can pass the article in here. So now this time if I hit this URL and the postman, you will see that I am not receiving any error, and I will receive the first ID article. So now let's just check this. So now let's just send. Now you can see that I'm receiving the first article in here. If I change this to second, and if I send, you can see that I am receiving the ID2 data. And if I get, you can see that I am receiving the whole data, so the first ID and the second ID in here. Let's work on our update functionality. So let me just copy this route, and at the bottom we are going to create our updates. So we can change this to update. We want to update according to the ID, and the method is put. Okay, now let's create our div update article, and we want to pass the ID. So the first thing is that we need to get the article, and we can just say articles dot query dot get, and we want to get a specific article according to the ID, so we can pass our ID in here. After that we need to get the title and also the body, so we can just say request, so request dot JSON, and this is title, and we want to do the same for the body, so request dot JSON, and this is body. Now we need to set our title and also body, so we can just say article dot title to the title, and article dot body, this should be body. And at the end we need to just commit the database, and we want to return our article schema because it's just one article, so we want to use article schema dot JSONify, and we can pass the article like this. So now let's check this update, and for this let me just copy this from here, and we can create a new tab, and let's just add this in this section, and this should be update, and I want to update the first one. And also let's also copy the data from here. So let me just copy this, or we will change the ID. So we can just go to the body. After that we can choose row, and from here we need to choose JSON. And so let me just remove this ID, because ID and date, so we want it should be just body and title. So body updated and title updated. Now let's just send, and we are receiving error. Let's check that where is the error. Oh, and the error is this, it's not get, it is put. Sorry for this. And now let's just send this again, and now you can see that this is the second body updated, and also we have the title. Now this is also updated, And now if you get this, so you can see updated body and title updated, and also the same will be for the our MySQL database. And if you see, we will see the newly updated data in here. Let's just go to the Flask, and you can see that this is updated. You can see this is updated, and also this is updated. And the last functionality is deleting the data. So now let's create data. I'm going to just copy this, and I can add this in here. So this is delete, and we want to delete according to the ID, and the method is delete. Now let's create article delete, and we want to delete according to the ID. Let's just get the articles, so we can use the articles dot query dot get. We can pass the ID, and now we can just say db dot session dot delete, and we want to delete the article. And at the end we also want to commit, so dot commit, and we can just return post article schema dot JSONify, and we can pass the article, so article, so it is db the article. Now let's just check this URL endpoint in the Postman, and so we can create a new tab, and in the new tab we can just copy this. We want to delete the first one, the first ID. Let's change this to delete, and change this to delete. Now let's just send, and now you can see that we are receiving 200 OK. And now if I get again, you will see that I have just one. You can see that I have just one data with ID 2, and if you see in here, you can see I have one data, and the same will be for the MySQL database, and you'll see that the first data is gone, and that is deleted. Alrighty guys, now we've created our Flask backend. Now it's time to integrate that with React Native mobile frontend. So using React Native, you can build mobile applications for Android and iOS. So you can see that React Native combines the best parts of native development with React, a best-in-class JavaScript library for building user interfaces. And React Native lets you create truly native apps and doesn't compromise your user experiences. It provides a core set of platform agnostic native components like view, text, and image that map directly to the platform's native UI building blocks. And also it's maintained by Facebook, so React Native, and React Native is being used in thousands of apps, but it's likely you have already used it in one of these apps. So now let's talk about the installation process, and there are two ways that you can install React Native. The first way is using Expo CLI, and the second way is using React Native CLI. So if you're new to mobile development, the easiest way to get started is with Expo CLI, and Expo is a set of tools built around React Native, and you will use Expo CLI for the installation. Now the second way is that if you're that's a React Native CLI, and it's telling that if you are already familiar with mobile development, then you may want to use React Native CLI. It requires Xcode or Android Studio to get started. Now the biggest difference between the Expo CLI and React Native CLI is this, that when you're using React Native CLI, then you have access to all native codes of Android and iOS. So you will have two folders, one for Android and one for iOS, that there will be the native codes of these platforms. But when you're using Expo CLI, then you will not have access to native codes of these platforms, and you will not see any iOS or Android folders when you're using Expo CLI. So now for the installation, first you need to have a Node.js and greater than this version, and after that you need to install Expo CLI globally, and you can just use -g and you can just use it like this, and we can just install this and like this, and now we should wait for the installation of the Expo CLI. Now Expo CLI has been installed. Let's create our project. And we can just say Expo init, and you can give the name of the project that you want. So let's change this to, for example, app project. You can just give it whatever name you want. So for example, Expo init app project. And now we can just hit enter, and there will be 3 templates for you that you need to choose from those templates, and we want to choose the first one, and that is an empty template. So now we want to choose blank template, a minimal app as clean as an empty, and we can just hit enter. So now we need to wait for this. It will take some times that our React Native application become installed. Now we are waiting for this. And now you can see that our project has been installed, and we have our Expo shared, and we have our node modules, app.js, package.json. And then we can see that with the Expo CLI, we don't have the Android and iOS folders in here. We have just Expo shared in here. And you can see that you can use npm start or npm run Android or iOS for running of your React Native application. Okay, now let's run our React Native application. So as I have already said, that you can use npm start or expo start, and after that it will run the Metro bundler, and from there you can run your React Native application. So first I can just change my directory, so cd app project, and from here I can just say npm start or expo start. So let me just say npm start. So now you can see that this is our React Native application. Now it's running, and if you see in here we have our Metro bundler, and you can see we have run on Android, run on iOS, simulators, and web browsers, and like this. Now there are different options that you can run your React Native application. Now the easiest, we have the easiest options and also the hardest options. The hardest option is this, that you need to install a virtual emulator. For example, if you have Android Studio, then you can use a virtual emulator from that, or if you have for example Genymotion, you can use an emulator for that, and you can just first run your emulator, and after that click on run Android device emulator, and it will be run. Now the easiest way is that you can download, for example, you can download the Expo application, so from the Play Store or App Store, and you can just scan this QR code and you can run your application. Another way is that you can just plug your mobile device through USB cable, and it's the easiest way, and you can just click on the run on Android device or emulator. So now let's just run this application. So right now if you see in here, we have just in our app.js file, you can see that right now we have just a simple text, and it's open app.js to start working, and now we want to just run that. So let me just click on run on Android device or emulator. Now I'm waiting for this. So for the first time it will take some time, and after that it will run quickly. And now you can see that it's building the JavaScript bundle, so for the first time, and it will build the JavaScript bundle, and after that it will run on the emulator or mobile devices. And now you can see that we are receiving, so this text open app.js to start working on your app. So now let's just bring change to this. For example, now let me just change this to welcome to Python, Flask, and React Native. Okay. So now if I save this and if I check this, you will see that I am receiving, now it's refreshing, and you can see that welcome to Python, Flask, and React Native. Alright guys, now in this part we're going to talk about basic structure of React Native application, and we're going to talk about the app.js, how you can create components and how you can use props. So now first of all, if we see our app.js file, in here you can see that we have some imports like status bar. Now the status bar is related to Expo status bar, and when you're for example installing your React Native application through a React Native CLI, you will not have this. This is specifically belong to the Expo CLI. Now you can see in here we are importing our React, and these are some components that we have. Style sheet, text, view from React Native. Now you can see that these are the built-in components, so we can say that view, text, these are the built-in components in React Native, and this is basically a React component. We can say that it's returning JSX. So you can see that we have a basic function at name of app, and after that we are returning a JSX in here. So we have view in here. Now view is a built-in component in React Native, and we can say that view is like div in a web world. We have div. Now in here we have view, and you can see that we are assigning a style to the view. So we can just say styles.container, and we will talk about the styles in the later part of the course. Right now you can see that we have view, and view is a container. You can assign styles to the view, you can add height and also width to the view. So after that we have a text. Now when you're rendering for example some text, you need to add text component in here. So for example in here I can just say text, and I can just say this is my second text, and now if I save this you will see that I have my, so you can see that this is my second text in here, and so this is the status bar, and after that these are the styles. So right now we are not going to talk about the styles, but we will talk about this in the later part of the course. Now this is a component. Let's create a new component. So when you're going to create a React application, now we need to create components, and the components are the building block of a React application. If you see in here, so React Native is like React. So if you're familiar with the ReactJS, now it's like that, but it uses native components instead of web components as building blocks. Now in ReactJS we have web components, but in React Native we have native components. So to understand the basic structure of React Native app, you need to understand some of the basics of React concepts like JSX. For example, components, how you can create components, how you can create states, how you can create props like this. So now let's create our first component in here. So in my app project I'm going to just create a new folder, and I call it components. And in the components, what I want to do, I want to just grab these two texts. And so first I need to create in here I need to create a new file. For example, I am going to just call it home.js. So it's a component. Now there are two types of components that you can use in React, or we can say React Native. So we have a functional component, and also we have class component. Now if you see in the app.js, this is a functional component. Now functional component is basically a JavaScript function, and class component is that you can use class to create your component. Now we will talk about the class component. So for right now we are going to just create a functional component. So in the home.js, so you can just for example create a default function, but also you can use an extension that you can just use that's called React Redux. So now if you see, I think yeah, it is, yeah, this is ES7 React Redux and React Native, so you can use this extension. So I've already installed it, and in here what I want to do is, for example, I'm going to create a functional component. So for that I can use our FCE like this, and after that hit enter. So you can see that we have basically just a function home. So first we have import React from React, and after that we have basically function home, and it's returning a JSX. So now we need to change this div because we are not using React, but it's a React Native. So for that we need to import Vue in here, and we can just add the Vue in this section. And now we are going to grab these two text from here. So let me just copy, or we can just copy these two text, and I can add it in here. So now we have created our component, and it's a functional component, and we have already said that JavaScript components are basically JavaScript functions, or for example classes. Now in the function home we are returning a JSX, and after that we are exporting this function or component that we can use from this. Now we need to import this home in our app.js. So in here we can just say import home from we can just say components, and after that that is home, like this. Okay, now after this we can add this home in here, so we can just say like this. So you can see that we have created our home.js, and we have added our home and our app.js. Now if you see, you will see that the result is the same. So okay, now we are receiving an error in here, I think. Now it's telling that can't find variable text. Now it's because in the home.js we have text, so we need to import text in here. So now if we see, so it's refreshing, we have error. Oh sorry, this is not related to the React, but it's related to the React Native. So sorry for this. Now I can just say import from React Native, and like this. So now these are the built-in components for the React Native, so we need to import this from the React Native library. Now if you see, okay, now you can see that we are receiving the same result, but this time we have created a new component, a separate component, and we have added these text in there. So now there is another concept that is called props. So if you see the documentation of the React Native, so now you can see that most components can be customized when they are created with different parameters. Now these created parameters are called props, or we can say short for the properties. Now for example, using props we can provide or send some data from a parent component to the child component. So right now if you see in here, our home.js is the child of app.js component. Now for example in here I have some data. Right now let me just add some dummy data in here. So I can just say const name, and I can just add some name in here. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to provide or send this name from this app.js to the home.js. Now for this you can see that we have added our home in here, and in here we can just say name. So you can give this any variable that you need, and here I'm going to just use name. So now we can use this in our home.js. Now when you're using props in the home.js, you need to add props as a parameters in here. So we can just say props. So you can give it anything in here, but it's good that you add that as a props. So in here we want to just render that in here, so we can just say props.name. And now if we see, so now we can see that we have name in here, and you can see that we have created a variable in here with the data, and we have sent that through the props to our home.js like this. And now we can see that we can access to that, and we can just say props.name. Now one important issue is this, that you cannot change the value of the props. Now it's immutable. For example, when you have assigned the value of the props, you cannot change that in here. Alright guys, now in this part we're going to talk about the styles in React Native. So right now if you see, we have a simple toText, and it is in our home.js component, and after that we have added our home.js in our app.js component, in our main component. And you can see that there are some styles for our app.js. Now the styles are implemented for the view, because we have added home in the view, and now these styles are also implemented for the home component. And you can see that in here we have styles.container, and if you come down, you can see that in here we can use a stylesheet.create. Stylesheet is related to the React Native, and it's a built-in component like text and view. We can use .create to create our style sheet. So you can see that flex1, and this is the layout management that is used by React Native, and that's flexbox. You can see that it's 1, it means that it will hold all the screen. And after that we have a background color. Now if I change this to red, you will see that the background color is changed to red color. And let me bring back the white color. And if you see in here, align items are center, and right now you can see that these two texts are in the center. Now if I remove this align item to the center, so you'll see that we don't have the items in the center. And also we have justify content, it's in the center. If I remove this, you'll see that our two text will go at the top. So now you can see that in here, like this. Now there are two kinds of styles that you can give. The first one is that you can give the style in here, and after that you can add or implement a style for your component, or for example any other component that you want. Now the second way is that you can add inline style. So for example in here in our home.js, if you see, we have a two text. Now I want to add an inline style for this text, so we can just say style, and after that we can just use it like this. Now in here we can give the style to this text component, and this style is inline style, and it will be implemented just for this text, not other components that we have in our home.js. So now I can just give for example, I can give a color, so I can give it red color for example for the first text. And if you see, now the color of text is changed. And for example you can give a background color, for example yellow, and so now you can see that we have a background color of yellow. And also you can add a padding, margin, and also all the styles that you want, you can just give it for this text component. Now this inline style, and you can see that we don't have the styles in this or this second text. Now in here I can add another style, so for this we can just say style, and I can just say for example color green, and if you see the color is green. Also you can give padding, so for example I want to give it padding 10, and Now if you see, you can see that we have a 10 padding. Also you can give margin, for example margin and 20, and if you see, you can see that we have 20 size margin in here. Now for example, if you don't want to give the styles in here, inline style, you can just give it, first you need to import the style sheet from React Native. So style sheet, and so in here we can create our style, const style and style sheet. So style sheet dot create, and in here now we can just give the name to the style sheet, for example text style. Now we can give these styles in here. So for example, we have a color green and padding 10 and also margin 20, and now we can remove this from here, and instead of that we can just say styles, so this style dot text the style dot text the style. So now if you see, you'll see that the result is the same and we don't have any problem. For example, if I change this to another color, brown, and you can see that it's changed to another color. Alright guys, now we have already learned that we can create functional components. Now it's time to learn about the class components. So now let's create our class component. I've already created a class home.js. Now because I have installed extension, so for the class component I can just use RCE. Now after that, hit enter. Now this is my class component, and as I have already said, that class components are basically JavaScript classes. You can see that we have a class in here, so let me just remove this export because I'm exporting default class home. You can see that we have class, and after that the name of the class, and it extends from the component, and the components are imported from the React. Now after that we need to create a render method in here, and it's a reserved keyword in React Native, and in here we are returning a JSX. Now we will not return a div class in here because div is related to web. For the React Native we are going to import Vue, so we can just say import Vue from React Native. Now let's just add Vue in here, so like this, and also I'm going to just import text, and in here I can just say text, and in the text I can just say hello from class. So now we have created our class component, and now we can add our class component in our home.js. So first we need to import this in our app.js, so we can just say import class home from dot components, and it's class home, and now we can easily add the class home in here. Also we don't need this status bar from the expo. Let me just remove that like this. Okay, so now if you see, you can see that we have our class component in here, and we are receiving hello from class. Now you can add a style to this. For example, if you want to add a style, now I want to add a style for this text, so I can just say style, and I'm going to use an inline style, and we can just say font size 20, and I can just add a color of so red color or whatever you can just say, or purple. So now if you see, we have our hello from class in here. Now if you remember, we have used props in functional components, and if you see the documentation of React Native, now There are two types of data that control a component. So we have props. We have already saw that how you can use props in functional component, and also we have a state. Now props are set by the parent and they're fixed throughout the lifetime of a component. And as I have already said that we cannot change a props. For data that's going to change, we have to use a state. For example, if we have a data and we have planned to change that, for that we need to use a state. Now I will show you that how you can use that. So first we are going to use state in a class component, and after that we will so first I'm going to use props in class component, and after that we will talk about the state. So now in my app.js I have this name, and as I have already used for the home functional component. Now let me just remove this because I have removed that props from my home page, from home screen. Now in the class home in here I can just add a name, and let me just say, for example, let me just give it a name in here. So now I can access to this, now I want to send this name from my app.js to the class home. So from the parent component to the child component. Now if you remember, in the functional component we need to add props in here, and after that we can just use it like this. So for example, props.name, and we can access to the props. Now in the class component we don't need to add props in here like this. For example, props are built in a class component, and we can just get that through the this. So now in here we can just say this.props.name. So now if you save this, so we have an error. Oh, it should be like this. Sorry for this. And now we can just save this, and let's just wait for the refreshing. Oh, this also we need to add a text in here because we have a string, and it should be wrapped in a text. So like this, and it should be in here. Okay, now let's just save this, and now now you can see that we are receiving this name from our app.js from here to our class component, that's class home.js. So like this you can use props in here. Now also I have already said that you can use a state, and for example for data that's going to change we have to use a state. For example in here I can just create state. So state, and for example I can just give it a name in here like this. Okay, now instead of this .props.name, this time I'm going to just use this name from the state. So for that what I want to do is to just say this.state.name. Now if you see, we will see the same result. But now what we can do, we can change this name because we have a state, and a states can be changed. So for changing of this state, for example, we need to create a button in here. So for that we are going to just say import the button from React Native, and I can just create a button in here. Or I can just use it like this. So click me, and now if you see, you can see that we have a button in here. So it's wrong, it should be title like this, and okay, now you can see that we have a button and we can click this. Now let's just add some style for this, and I can just say style. We can give a padding top to 20, and font size to 20. And you can see that we have this. Also we can add a inline style for the button, so I can just say style and I can just say padding top 20. Okay, now so it's not working because we have a padding top in here. So for this reason, let me just remove this. Now I want, when I click on this button, I want to change this text. Now in the props we cannot do this, we cannot change the text. Now in here we have a state. For example, if I click on this click me, I want to change this name from here. So for that we need to use on press, not on click. Now if you're using ReactJS or web version, then you can use on click. But for the React Native, we need to use on press. And in here, I can just change that. So by pressing off the button, and I can just say use set state, this dot set state, and in here I want to change the name to, for example, this is changed. So, and here we have created a state, and after that now we are going to change that state using the press button. Now in here, if I click on this click me, you can see that this is changed. Now this was using a class component. Now how we can use states in a functional component? Now there's another concept that's called React hooks. React hooks, you can use that. Now before this there was a problem that for example we cannot use the states in a functional component, but after introducing the React hooks, now we can use that. There's use state. For example, you can use effect hooks for the side effects, for the fetching of the data. Now in the home.js, so in here first we need to import that, so we can just say use state. Now if you see React documentation, so you can see hooks are a new addition in React 16.8. They let you use state and other React features without writing a class. Now in here we have imported use state, and in here we can just use state like this. And after that you need to give an initial value. Now this will be an array. This will be a simple string or integer or an object. So in here we are going to just use just a simple string. Now it returns array, and we are using array structuring, so we can just say const, and for example we can just say name, set name. Now instead of this, so in here you can see that the initial values, so this is a name. Now we can access to this using this name, and we can change this using this set name. So this is a variable, and this is a function that change this name state. Now in here let me just use this the name, and also let me change this to another one, for example John Doe. Okay, so now if I refresh, if I see, so now you can see that we have a John Doe in here. Also I'm going to just create a button, and I can just say, so or I can just copy this, or let me just add a button. So I can just say button, and the title is click, and let me just add a font size for this text style, and we can just say font size, and it should be 25. Now in here we can add an on press for the changing, so we can just say on press. So also we need to import this button, so I forgot to import this from React Native. Now in the on press we want to change this name, so we can just use set name in here. So we can just say set name, and we want to just say this is changed. Okay, now if we see, so we have our button in here. Now if I click on this, you can see that this is changed, and if I click on this, this is also changed. So this is functional based component and this is class based component. Alright guys, now in this part we're going to talk about FlatList. Now before talking about a FlatList, we are going to use a library that's called React Native Paper. So Paper is a collection of customizable and production ready components for React Native following Google Material Design Guidelines. So there are different built-in material design components that you can use, for example like card, like icons, and we will use card from this React Native Paper. Now first you need to install this. You can just use npm install React Native Paper, or if you're using Yarn, you can use Yarn add React Native Paper. So now let's talk about the FlatList. Now it's a performant interface for rendering basic flat lists supporting the most handy features. So it's fully cross-platform, optional horizontal mode, and configurable viewability, callbacks, header support, footer support, pull to refresh that we will learn about this. It has scroll loading automatically. So now let's just create this flat list. So the first thing is that I'm going to remove some codes from my this components. So now we will remove this, and I don't need, so for right now let me just leave it like this, but I don't want to use my class component. And from my home.js, what I want to do is to just so first in the app.js, I'm going to just remove this class from here, class component, and I don't need this. And from home, what I want to do is to remove these buttons like this, and so now the first thing is that we need to import FlatList in here. So we can just say FlatList, and also let me just remove this state. We are going to create some data in here, so I'm going to just call it data, and it is an array of some objects. We have ID1, and so I can just say ID1, and we have a title, and I can just say first title, and we have body or description, so I can just say body, first body. So for right now we haven't fetched data from our Flask backend. Right now I'm going to just add some dummy data in here for the flat list, and after that I will replace that with the data that I'm fetching from my backend API. So I can just say second title, second body, and let's just add one more data in here, and this should be the third title and also third body. Now in the view we are going to add a flat list in here, so you can just use flat list. Now the first thing is that you need to add the data for the flat list. So I'm going to use data, and now the data that I'm going to use, it's the predefined data, dummy data that I want to add it in here. And after that we need to add the render item. So render item, and in the render item we can just say data. So for right now we are going to just print this data, and we can just say data, and let's just say console.log the data. And also we need to add a key extractor in here, so we can just say key extractor, and we can say item, because we have integer ID in here. Now we need to convert this to string because it expects string, so we are going to use backticks, and we can just say item.id. So now if I save this flat list, and if I check my terminal. Let me just check this, and in here, so now you can see that in here I'm seeing my items, my data, and I'm interested in this item. So now what I want to do is to create a new method in here in this section. So I can just say const render data, and it takes an item in here, and in here we want to return some JSX. So I want to return cart. So let me just import cart from React Native paper. So I can just say import cart from React. So I've already installed it, React Native paper, and in here I can create a cart. So cart, and let me just add, so we can just create a text. So we want to just say item dot title. So for right now also I'm going to just render my body or description here, but I don't need to this. I will remove that. So we have item dot title and item dot body. Okay, so now we can add this render data. Now instead of console.log, we want to just add our render data. So as I've already said that we are interested in the item, so in here we can just say item, and let's just return our method. So return method render data, and we want to pass the item in here. So now if I save this, so now if I see, you can see that I'm seeing first title and body, and title and also body. Now right now we are not seeing the cards in here because we need to add a background. Also you can see that we have our title in here now in my app.js. So for right now I'm going to just import contents from expo-constants. I will remove this, but for right now, because I want to add a margin top. So now in here in the style, also I need to remove this align items from here. So now if I see, okay, you can see now it's in here, and in this section I can just add margin top, and I can just say contents dot status bar height. So margin top contents dot status bar height. So now if I save this, and now you can see it's in here. Now let's add some, also we need to change the background color. I think it should be DD and FDF, EDD FDF, and if you see, yeah, now the background color is changed. Let's just add some style for this card, and we can just open our home.js, and let's import style sheet. So it's imported, and in here I can just create another one that is card style. So I'm going to just say remove this from here, and because I'm not using this style, so I can just say card style, and we can add a margin of 10 and padding of 10. Now we can add this style in the cart. So style, and I can just say styles dot card style. So now if you see, so we are receiving an error for built-in check. Okay, that was not an error, it was just, now you can see that we have our cards in here. You can see it's looking good, and also we can add a style for this. Let me just align style for the title. So style, and I can just say font size to 20. it's like this, 20. And now I am seeing this error. I think it should not give me this error. Okay, now you can see that we are receiving first title and also second title, and this is much bigger. Now let's add a floating action button in here, so it will be for inserting the data. So what I want to do is to, in my home.js, I want to import a floating action button from the card. So it is FAB, and after it is FAB, and after importing this, we are going to create that in here. So after the flat list, so we can just say FAB. And now the first thing is that we are going to add a style, and it should be styles.fab. so for right now we haven't created any style for this, and we can just say small, and I want it should be false. Also we can add an icon, so the icon should be plus, and also we need to add a color or theme for this, and this should be colors, and I can just use colors and accent. Now we can give it green. So now also we can add on press. For right now we can just say console.log, we can just say pressed. Now let's create this FAB style in here, so I can just say FAB, and we can just add our position. So the position is absolute, and also we can just give a margin, so we can just give the margin 16 and write 0, and also bottom to 0, so write 0 and also bottom 0. So we have position absolute, margin, right, and also bottom. And now let's just save this and let's check that we have yeah, you can see that we have in here, but we want to bring this in this section. So for that, in our view that we have in here, we can just add a style, and we can just say flex1. And now let's check, and now you can see that we have our floating action button in here. Alright guys, now let's learn that how we can fetch our data. So right now if you see, we have some dummy data in here, and 3 data that I have already added this, and it's a predefined data. And also you can see that right now I'm using MemoPlay as a virtual emulator, and also I have brought changes to my app.py file. And now you need to add, instead of localhost for the Flask, you need to add your new host in here, and you can add your IP address, and also this is the port, because if you don't do this, you will receive network request failed. And right now you can see that it's running on this address, and if you see, you can see that in the get method we have our 2 data. And also these are our Flask backend, and we have our articles table, article schema, and we have our different routes. Now in the home.js, what I want to do is to bring changes to the in here. So the first thing is I have already imported use state. Also I need to import use effect, because when you want to fetch some data and a functional component, then you need to use effect. So it's used for example side effects for fetching the data. And we can say that use effect is like component that mount in a class component. So now let's just create our state in here, and I'm going to just call it data set data, and I can just say use state like this, and I'm going to just add an empty array in here. Now I have called that data. It's because in my FlatList I'm using this data, but you can name it whatever you want. You can just call it article, you can call it posts, and that's not a problem. Now we can use our use effect hook in here, and it is after that you need to give an array a row function in here, and a row function. And now because we want to fetch our data just once, you need to add an empty array dependency in here. If you don't do this, there will be now in every render the data will be fetched. So by this reason we need to add use effect, and after that we need to add an empty array dependency in here. Now let's just use in here we want to use fetch, and now we can just add our URL. So this is, and also you can give a method, even though it's not necessary to when you're getting the data you need to add a method, but I'm going to just add a method of get because we want to get the data. Now this will return a promise, so we can just say .then we are receiving response, and we need to just convert the response to the JSON, and after that we are receiving the actual data, and I'm going to just call it article, and after this we can set this article to the set data. So we can just say like this, set data article. Now this data state can access to the data that's related to our backend, to our Flask backend. Now we have already added this data in the FlatList, so we don't need this const data in here, and we want to just remove this. And right now you can see that this is our FlatList, and this is the data for entering. Now if I save this and if I check my this, okay, now you can see that we are receiving our two data in here, and these are the two data that we have in our backend API. So like this you can get the data from your Alright guys, now let's learn that how we can insert the data. So first what we want to do is to create our form. Now we need two input fields, and also we need one button for inserting the data. So for that I'm going to create a new component in here, and I'm going to just call it, so for example, create.js. And after creating of the create.js component, now this should be a functional component, so I'm going to just use RFCE, and let me just import. So we can just say import view from React Native, so we can import the view from React Native like this, and also we need to import so style sheet, because we also want to give style sheet, so like this. Now change this to view, and we can change this to view, and let me just for right now just say text create screen, and for right now I'm going to open my app.js, and in the app.js I want to import my this create. Let me just import create. So for right now I'm going to just remove this because I will add this back, and for right now I want to just create my this screen. So now if you save this, you will see that I'm receiving create screen. Now let's create our input fields in here, and so first I need to import use state, because I need to use that in here for my input fields. And now let's create our const. So the first one is title, and also we have set title, so use state, and we can add an empty string in here. Let's just copy this. We want for the body, and also set body. Now after doing this, after creating of the state, now let's create our input fields. Also we need to import text input, so we can just say text input, and also button from React Native paper, like this. Let's remove this text from here, and for right now I can create my text input in here. So I can just say text input, and so now in here let's just add our, so first we need to add a label for this. So the label is, for example, title. I need to bind the value, so this is I'm going to use my title state, so title, and also I can just add a mode, and this should be outlined, and we can add on change text, and in here we can just say text, and we can use set title, so set title to text. So now let's just save this, and we can check that we have, yeah, now you can see that we have title input field in here. Let's just add a style for this, so we can just say style, and this should be styles dot input style. And now let's go, you can use an inline style, but I want to just add this input style in here. So let's create our style, const styles, and style sheet dot create, and now we can add input style. We can give a padding of 10, and also a margin top of 30, and it should be good. So I think we have an error, or input style, oh sorry, this should be styles dot input style. Okay, now let's add our another input field, and I'm going to just copy this, paste it in here, and I will bring some changes to this. So first, I don't need this style in here. I am going to just give an inline style for this, so I can just give a margin of 10 like this, and the label, for the label I'm going to just use description. And for the value, we need to change this to description, or we can say body, and this should be outlined, and also I'm going to just use multi-line because I want it should be multi-line, and I can just say number of line, and it should be 10. On change text, we want to just use set body. So let me just show you. So we have already created set body, and the value we have binded the body. Now we can just say set body to text, and now if we save this, you can see that we also have a description in here. So also let me just, if I make this for example 15, and I think it should be padding, if I give it padding 15, yeah, now padding, and it should be 10, not 15. Okay, now let's create our button, and we can just say button, and in the button, so this time we are going to use React Native paper button, and also we can add a style for this button, and I can use an inline style, so I can just say margin, I can give it 10, margin 10, And also I'm going to use an icon in here, so the icon should be pencil, and the mode is contained. And also for right now we can just add an on press, and let me just say, we can just say, for example, console.log. So console.log, and we can just say pressed. So now you can see we have a button, and I think we have forgot to add a title for this button. So in here I can just say title, and title should be, for example, insert article. So let's save this. I think the title is not working in here, and I need to just make it like this, and in here I can just say insert article. Now you can see we have our so now that's no problem. Okay, now you can see we have our title, description, and also we have our insert article. Alright guys, now in this part we're going to learn that how you can use React Native navigation, and especially React Native navigation version 5. So for right now, if you see in our home.js, we have a floating action button, and in here we have on press. For right now we're going to just cancelling the pressed text in here, but we want, when we click on the press button, we want to navigate to the create.js component that we have our input fields and button for the inserting the data. So for that, what we need to use React Native navigation system. So now if you see, there are different versions that you can use. So if you see in here, so we have version, so right now the version 5 is available, and also you can, if you want, you can use version 4, but we are using version 5. So the first thing is that you need to install React Navigation Native, and you can just use this command for the installation. If you're using Yarn, you can use another command, but because we are using npm, so I've already installed it using this command. Now after installation of the React Native navigation, you need to install some more dependencies. Now this will be different. If you have React Native CLI, then you need to install this this dependencies, but if you're using Expo CLI, then you need to install this. So Expo install, for example, we have React Native gesture handler, and also, for example, React Native screens. So you need to install this. Now after installation of this, you need to come down, and here in the navigator section also you need to install a stack navigator. So if you click on the stack, you will see a stack navigator, and also the version is 5. Also you need to install this. You can just use npm install at React Navigation Stack. So first you need to install React Native navigation. After that, install the dependency for that. And in the third step, you can install React Navigation Stack like this. So you can see that they also have an example in here. Now let's just create our React Native navigation, and we want to create this in our app.js because it is our main component, and we want to create our navigation system in this app.js file. So the first thing is that we need to import this stack. So we can just say import create stack navigator from React Navigation Stack. And after that, we need to import another library. So let me just copy this. That's called so now this library is related to React Navigation. So we can just say React Navigation Native. So we can just say native. And in here we can just use navigation container. So we can just say navigation container. So we need to import these. Now after doing this, what we want to do is to create our stack navigator in here. So I can just say const, I can just call it stack, and in here I can just say create stack navigator. And after creating the stack navigator, now we are going to just bring some change to our this function app that we have. So in here, in this section, now in here what I want to do is to remove this export from here, and I don't need this default. Let me just also remove this from here. I have just function app in this section, and here I'm going to return, instead of create component, I want to return my stack navigator. So I can just say stack dot navigator. So we need to create our navigator in here, and after that we need to add our screens in here. So first we want to so I have already added my home screen. Now this will be our main screen. So when we, for example, when we open our application, we want to show the home, and after that we have a floating action button. By clicking off that, we want to navigate the user to the create component. So now in here we can just say stack dot screen, and you need to give the name of the screen. So for example, the name of the screen is, so this will be our home page, and we need to give the component in here, and the component is our home, like this. And now let's just copy this. We want to create another one, and that should be for the, for example, for creating. So we can just say yeah, this should be create, and the component name is create. So now for right now we have two components, and we have added that to the stack navigator, but we will create more components, and we will add that in the later part of the course. So now we have created our function app. After that, what we want to do is to export this. Now in here, in this section, we can just say so I think, oh, I don't have export, so I can just say export default, and in here I want to return the navigation container. So I can just say navigation container, so navigation container, and in here I need to add my app, so I can just say app. Okay, so now let's check our app that it is working or not. So before running, we have a problem here. It is return, so like this, and I have received an error from this. Now let's just check, and okay, there is no problem. And now let's wait for this. So now you can see that we have our home in here. You can see that we have home in this section. Now what we want when we click on this floating action button, we want to navigate to the create.js that we have in here. So in the home.js, and now in the floating action button, where is it? Yeah, in here. In the on press, we are going to just navigate to the create. So we can just say props dot navigation dot navigate, and we want to navigate to the create page. Now this is the name that we have given in our app.js. So if you see, the name is create, and in here we can just say, and on press we want to props dot navigation dot navigate to the create page. Now also, because we're using props, we need to add props in here, so we can just say props, and now let's just save this, and we want to check that it's working or not. So now if I click on this, yeah, now you can see that now I am on the create page, and you can see the title is create. Now I can go back, and after that I can click on this, and now I'm on the create screen. Now let's work on our inserting logic. So in here we want, when we click on the insert article, for example, we are adding the title and description, and after that we are going to click on the insert article. We want to insert the data. So for this I'm going to open my create.js, and in here I want to, so I have already created my const title and also set body, and in here I'm going to just create another method for inserting the data. So const insert data, and it is an row function. So we are going to use fetch, so we can just say fetch, and now we need to add the URL, so we can just use this, and we can just grab this and copy this and paste it in here. Now instead of get, we want to use so if I see, let me just come down, so add. Now this is the add route, and it's used for adding the data, so I can just add this in here. Now in here also we need to add the method, so we can just say method, and the method is post, and also we need to add the headers, so and content type, and it is content type, and it is application/JSON. And also, because we are sending some data, now we need to also add the body in here, so we can just say json.stringify stringify, so json.stringify, and in here what we want to do, we want to send the title and also the body, so we can just say title to title and body to body, like this. So this is an object, and after that it will return a promise, so we can just catch that in the then block. So we are receiving our response, and we can just say response.json, and after that we need to just say .then, and in here we are receiving the data, or we can say the articles, whatever you can just call it. And after that what we want to do is, after adding the data, we want to navigate to the home page, and in here we can just say props.navigation, so navigation.navigate, and we want to just go to the home. So this is the home name that we have already given in the stack navigator. So now because we are using props, we need to add the props in here, and if there was an error, we can just grab that in the catch block, and we can just say error console.log the error, like this. Okay, so now after doing this, we need to add our this insert insert method and the onPress. So we can just go to the, so in here we have onPress. For right now it's console.log, and instead of that we want to just add our this insert data, and I'm going to just grab this and add this in here. Okay, so now let's just save this, and we are going to check that it's working or not. Okay, so now we are in here, so let me just say this is my title. Let's add this description in here. Now if I click on the insert article, so now we are back in the home, but we are going to just save this because we want to see the data. So and now we should see the data in here. We are not seeing the data. So now you can see that we are seeing our data. This is my title and this is our description. And also if you check get route in here, so you can see that we have our new data in here. So like this you can insert or add data. Alright guys, now let's work on our pull to refresh functionality. So right now if you see, we can insert the data, but when we are back to the home page we are not seeing the data. We need to save that, and after that we will see the data. Now for this we want to add pull to refresh functionality. So for example, if when we add the data, we can just pull to refresh and we see the data. So for this we are going to open our home.js, and in here we need to create another state. So I can just say const loading, and also set is loading. And by default we want to make this false. It means that by default we don't have any loading. Now we want to create another method in here, so I can just say const load data, and now in the load data I'm going to add my this fetch functionality, and like this. And also I can just add a dot catch in here, so I have forgot to add error. If there was an error, console.log the error. Okay, so now we can just call our this load data in our use effect, and in here what we want to do that for example when we when we fetch the data, and after the set data we are going to just make the set loading to false. So we can just say, and by default it should be true, so not false, by default it should be true. And now in here we can just say set loading, and we want to just make it to false. And now we can check this that it's working or not. Also in our render items in our flat list we need to add refreshing functionality, because this pull to refresh is related to the flat list. Now also we need to add that in here, so we can just come down in our flat list, and in here so we have our data render items, and after that we can just add our on refresh. So we can just say on refresh, and we can just say load data, and also we can add refreshing, so refreshing, and we can just make this to the loading, refreshing on refresh. So now let's check this. So now you can see that we have an indicator in here like this, but it is loading, I think. So it's loading because in here I have set as loading, but I have forgot to add this. I have used set loading, so set is loading. And now let me just come down, and in here we have load data. Okay, now we should not see the so now you can see we have just a simple loading, and after that we don't have that loading. Now let's just insert the data in here. So let me just say pull to refresh React Native pull to refresh, and if I click on insert article, so if I pull to refresh this, you can see that we are seeing the data in here. Alright guys, now in this part we're going to talk about the details page or details component. So for right now, if you see in our home page, we are seeing our title and also description. Now what we want just the title in our home screen. For example, when we click on the title, we want to navigate to another screen or component, and on that component or screen we want to show the title, the description, the date and time, and also two buttons, one for updating and one for deleting the specific article. So for that I have already created a new component at name of details.js, and now we can just create our functional component, and we are going to just use our FCE. So this is our functional component, and what we want to do is to import view and also scroll view from React Native, like this. And let's change this div to scroll view right now, like this. Okay, now we need to go to the home.js, and the home.js, now this is the place that we are rendering our title and also item.body. So we want to create another method in here, and from there we want to just navigate to another screen. So in here we can just say const clicked item, and we can just pass the data in here, and from here we can just say props dot navigation dot navigate, and we want to navigate to the details page. So we have created our details page, and also we need to send the data. So now we need to add this details in our app.js and our stack navigator. So in here first we need to import this, so we can just say import, and this is details, and this is details, and in the stack navigator we can just say the name is details and the component is also details. So now we have created our this details stack navigator, and let's just go to the home.page, and from here we are going to navigate to the details page. Also we need to pass the props, so we have already added the props in here. Okay, now in the now in the item.title, in here we want to add an on press. So in this section, so this is our text style, in here we can just say on press, and in the on press we want to call our this clicked item method or function, and we can just pass the item. So now if I click on one of these, and now for example on this, so now you can see that I'm in the details page. Now if I click on this, so on the title I'm in the details page. We will remove this body, we don't need this. So for right now let's just go to the details page, and we need to get the items from our navigation. So now in here we need to create another constant data, so we can just say const data, and we can just use props dot route dot params dot data. So we want to get the data from our routes. Now after doing this, now let's just check this data, now that we have these data, and we need to create a view in here, and view. Now in the view, so first we want to create a text, so we have imported the text in here. Now we need to just add the text in here, and now let's create text, and in the text we want to just say data.title. So data.title, and also we need to create another text in here, and this should be for data.body, and we need to add another one. So for example, if you want to print the date and time, because in our this model we have date also, and we can just say data.date. So now let's just save this and let's just check. So if I click on it will not work because we need to add props in here like this in our details, because we are using props. And now if I click on the first title, so you can see this is the first title, this is the first description, and this is the date. Now for example, if I click on this pull to refresh, so this is the title, this is the description, and this is the date and time. Okay, now let's just add some styles for this. So right now you can see that we don't have any style for this, and in here we need to import style sheet. So I can just say style sheet, and now let's just come down, and in here we can just say const style sheet dot create, and in here we want to create our style sheet. So first we want to just say for view style, and we can add a padding of 10 and also a margin of 10. So we want to add a padding and also margin. Now let's just add this style in our view. So in the view we can just say style, and this should be styles.view style. And if I click on this, so now it's looking much better. We have a padding and also margin. Let's just add some inline style for the font, for the text. So we can just say font size to 25. Let's add this for the body, and for the body I want it should be 20, and also I need to add a margin top, so I can just say margin top 10. And also we can add a style for this date, and I can just make it, for example, 15. So now let's check, and if I click on this, so you can see we have this, and if I click on this, so we have our title, and also this is the date. Let's also add a margin top to the date. And if I go back, so now it's looking much better. So also we want to create two buttons. So let me just copy my button, I think from the create.js, and let me just copy this button. And first we are going to create a view in here. So inside this view we want to create another view, so view and view, and we can add this button in here, and let's just make it so okay. Also we need to import this, and we can just grab this, and this button is related to the React Native paper, and we can just say import button, and we need to bring some change to this. So for right now we can just say console.log, and let's just say pressed. And the first one should be for editing or updating, like this. So the icon is update. So we are going to just remove this style from here, because we don't need any style for this button. And now let's copy this button. We want to create one more button. Now if you save this, you will see that we have a button. So this is our edit button, and let's just add another button, and this is the icon is delete, and this is delete. So now we have two buttons in here. Also we are going to just add some button style in here. So for the view, so in here we can just say style and styles.btn style. Now let's create this btn style at the bottom. We can give a flex direction to this, and we want it should be row wise. We are going to just give justify content, and this should be space around, and we need to give a margin of 15, and also a padding of 10. So now let's just save this. So we are seeing an error where it should be. So we need to add a comma in here. Now let's just check. Also, we have another error. We need to just add a comma in here. And now let's check. Yeah, now you can see that we have delete and also edit buttons. So if I go to, for example, another one, we have edit and delete. And if I go to this, we have edit and delete. Now in the home.js, we don't need this body. We can just remove this. Just we need the title, so we can just say title, and also we can just make the font size to 25, or for example 23. It should be a little bit bigger. And now, so we are on the details. Alright guys, now let's work on our edit functionality. So right now you can see that when I click on the title, for example first title, I'm navigating to the details page, and on there I have two buttons, one for edit and one for delete. So for example, when I click on the edit button, I want to navigate to another components that will be edit.js, and on the edit.js I will have my two input fields with the one button for updating the data. So right now you can see that I have created my new component at name of edit.js, and I have created this in the component, and this is just basically a functional component. Right now we have just one view in here. Now let's add this new component into our stack navigator. So I'm going to just open my app.js file, and in here I can just import the edit, and I can just say edit, and now let's just copy this and change this to edit, and this should be edit. So now after clicking on my details.js, so now in the edit, instead of console.log, we can just say props.navigate. Now let's just save this and let's just check that it's working. Let me just reload this. Props.navigate to the edit page. So it's building JavaScript bundle. So now if I click on, this is my first title, and after that if I click on the edit, so now I'm on the edit page. And if I, for example, grab another one, and if I click on the edit, I'm on the edit page. Now in the edit page I want to render two input fields and one button. So I can copy this from the create.js. So now I don't want to write these codes again and again. I can just grab all of the codes from here, and even I can just paste all of them like this, and instead so right now I'm going to just remove this updating functionality because I will add this later. For right now I want to change this to edit because this is my edit component, and I can just export this edit. So now in here I have title, set title. Now I need to get my data, and in the details I need to send the data so in here also I need to add another one that should be data. Now this is the data that I want to send, so this data, and after that sending the data to my edit component, now in the edit.js I can grab that, so I can just say const data props.route.params. Now in here I can, instead of empty text, I can just say props.title, empty string. I can also say props.body. now this data, not props, sorry, this should be data, data.title and data.body. this data will have my data. So now if I save this, and so if I click on this, after that if I go to edit, so you can see that I'm seeing my the data is populated in the title and also in the description. Now this is because we have binded the title and also the body in our text input. Now in here we can change this to update article. Let's just say update article, and we can change this to update. And also we so for right now, let me just say update data. Now let's create this method in here, const update data, and for right now I don't want to add anything in here. And so now you can see that we have update article. Now if I click on another one, for example this pull to refresh, and if I click on the edit, so you can see that I'm in the pull to refresh page, and you can see that we have the title and also description. Now in the update article, let's just copy the code, and we can just use this fetch, and we can just add this in our edit.json here. Now this time we are going to use another route for updating. Now if you see my backend, and if I go to the app.py file, and we have our add article and we have our update or put. Now this is update, and we can update that according to the specific ID. So now in here, instead of this we can just use update, and we need to change this to backticks because we also want to use ID. And after update in here I can just say $data.id like this. Okay, so the method is put, and we have our content type, it's application/JSON, and we body stringify, we need title, body, we are receiving response.json data, and after the updating the data we are navigating to the home page, and also we want to send the data. I can just say data to the home page. And this is update. Let's just check that I have made a mistake, I think, in here. Yeah, this is update, and also I can add it like this. So now I want to update this. Let's just say updated, and in here in the description I can just say updated. Click on update article. So we are back in the home page. If I pull to refresh, and you can see that this is updated, and if we see, our description is also updated. Now let's just do this first title, and let me just say I can just say welcome to Flask and React Native course, and we can just update this one, and now pull to refresh. So you can see welcome to Flask and React Native course. So like this you can update the data. Alright guys, now let's learn that how we can delete our data. That's the last operation. So if we go to the details.js, and here we have our delete button. So let's just create our deleting functionality in here. So I can just say const delete data, and I need to pass data in here. So now we can just use our fetch in here. So I'm going to just copy this, and I can just add it like this. And after this, now we need to change this to if we go to the app.py file, now for deleting we have delete, and we can just delete that according to the specific ID that we have. So now let's just change this to backticks, so we can just say like this. And now in here we can just say data.id, and we can pass the header in here. So first we are going to just add the method, and the method is delete, and we can just pass the headers, and in the headers we need to add this content type. Let me just copy and paste it in here. So application/JSON, and it will return a promise, and we can just say .then and data, and after deleting the data we can just say props dot navigation dot navigate, and we want to navigate to the home page. So we can just say props, after deleting the data we want to go to the props dot navigation dot navigate, we want to navigate that to the home page. And if there was an error we can just grab that in the catch block, and we can just say console dot log the error. So now we have created our delete method in here. Now let's just add this. Also we need to add it like this. We need to add this delete method in here, and instead of on press we can just say, and we can pass the data in here. And now let's just save this, and we want to check that we can delete a data or not. So in here I want to delete this pull to refresh, so let me just click on this, and after that click on this delete button. And now if I pull to refresh, now the data is not deleted. And if we check our this, yeah, we have the data and it is not deleted. Now let's check that where is the problem, and where we have the problem, data.id delete. Alright guys, I think the problem is this, it's not methods, it's method. Now we can just save this once more, and now we can just click on this pull to refresh, update it, and if I click on the delete, so and now you can see the data is deleted. And if we check our backend you can see that we don't have that data. So now let's just delete another one. So I want to delete this, click on the delete, so data is deleted. If I pull to refresh, so you can see that I don't have the data in here.